ask me if they can look at my face, except doctors and nurses. I mean, people do look at me quite often, but usually only if they can convince themselves that I don't notice they're looking. They try not to let their eyes stop wandering when they look over in my direction. They pose, as if they were surveying some broader scene. I understand a little the social dictate to not stare at misshapen people. You want to spare their feelings. You don't want them to feel ugly. At the same time, though, even before I became what I am, I used to wonder, isn't it okay to stare if something seems to stand out? Why not stare? My own perspective is probably tainted by having spent long hours before mirrors after the accident. It would be pretty hard to make me feel ugly. Words like pretty and ugly exist in a different vocabulary from the one you might invent to describe the face that had to be put back together by a team of surgeons. My face is strange and terrible. It merits a little staring.
That's John Darnielle reading from his new novel, Wolf in White Man. Thanks for reading that. Why did you want to make your main character someone who as a teenager survived a self-inflicted gunshot in the face and has to live with the physical and psychological consequences, including pain, and a face so disfigured he rarely ventures out of bed?
Well, I started without that idea. I started just writing a scene with a bunch of teenagers in high school smoking cigarettes, the one in the last chapter. And it wasn't going anywhere in particular. I was just sort of trying to write a scene that was familiar to me because I used to go across the parking lot from my high and smoke cigarettes with metal kids. And when I sat down to write the morning I started it, I was writing that chapter, the last one, and I had no sense of where I was going, no outline. I had the title already because I really liked that title, but I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And then as it ramped up toward this ending scene, it was sort of getting away from me. And then the thing that happened. And I thought, well, as a short story, that's not very good, right? That's like sort of a very beginner's move in a short story to have it end with somebody dying. So I thought, well, he shouldn't be dead then. What should happen? And that's when I got the idea to trace backwards to that moment. And then I started asking myself questions in the way that improvisational comedians do. You know, okay, well, what does he do for a living? What does he wear? Who are his friends? How does he make any money? What does he wish he was? And all those sorts of things. And that performative element is sort of how I wrote the book, by just asking myself questions about, well, what happens then? You know, what if this happens? Then what?
Your character has survived a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
Right.
He says it was an accident. It'd be hard to do that to your face with a rifle.
Well, he calls it the accident.
Yeah.
It is an accident. I'll defend his choice of that term, but I picked that one intentionally. It's an accident insofar as he sort of got caught in a sequence of movement that sort of ran ahead of him. So it's not. He didn't have a premeditated plan until that moment. So it's an accident, and also I think there's a moment where he talks about he and his parents settling on the word "the accident" in order to refer to it.
Did you know people who had survived a suicide attempt but were left in a physically compromised or disfigured state afterwards?
No, I know a lot of people who survived suicide attempts, but nobody whose attempt is sort of advertised to the world. But there were, of course, James Vance and Will Belknap, the two teenagers who shot themselves after listening to Judas Priest a lot, and then their parents sued Judas Priest. Do you remember this story?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that was the jumping off part, because one of them survived the pack, and his parents, if there was no pack, as far as I know, but his parents sued Judas Priest, who had to come to Reno to appear to defend their music. And backwards masking was the main trope in this trial. And I thought about all that, about things moving backwards and trying to extract sense from things by writing backwards, and it was sort of an inspiring point.
Right, the backwards trope you're talking about. Is the Christians who maintain that if you play heavy metal records backwards, you hear the messages that Satan has embedded in them, because
or that the artist is embedded.
The artist is sometimes a messenger of Satan, aren't they?
Yes, on behalf of Satan.
Yes. So your character in this novel has had a lot of trouble functioning in the world. As a teenager, he's lived in fantasies created by others, like Conan the Barbarian comics.
Right.
And when he is slowly recovering from his self-inflicted gunshot wound, he creates a game of his own. And this is in the pre-internet era, so this is like a mail game, where people mail in their next move and he mails in what they're supposed to do next. And the scenario is it's a kind of desolate future and a radiated world, and they have to go from one place to another through these ordeals seeking shelter. And the people who play it are people who, like the main character, don't feel comfortable in the world as it is, and they need to retreat to a fantasy world, whether that's heavy metal or video games or the game that this character creates. And I'm wondering if that was your case when you were a teenager, that you seriously needed a world to retreat to.
Sure, it was music for me. I mean, it was, and I think it's true for so many. I mean, I think when you first start to discover which music is yours and which speaks to you, you know, I think whatever your life is like, you experience that very, very deeply. You know, and everyone remembers the music of their teenage years, I think, with a special fondness. And I think part of that's because you're just discovering the power of this amazing art form. And yeah, I mean, I had a pair of Nova 30 headphones that were my life rafters. I would put them on and could disappear into Louisiana rock and roll. And there's a big amount going, or early Genesis records. A little sugar.
And did you have comic books too?
I was a huge comic book fan. My dude was the Incredible Hulk. That was my hero.
Why?
I get emotional when I think about it, because the Incredible Hulk was fiercely loyal to people who had treated him well. It was the one major value in his life was the value and treasure his friends, and anyone who mistreated them he wanted to destroy utterly, not just to punish, but to